Hey RV family, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morris, the review guy, review music for the love of music, and I'm back again to bring you another video. Welcome back to my ongoing segment where I talk about the best releases from a variety of genres from a variety of years. Currently we are going from 2000 up to 2019. In the last episode I talked about the gore grind subgenre, so if you want to check that out, that will be in the end screen as well as the description. But let's go into one of the more well-known genres, more well-established genres. I'm of course talking about death metal, one of the most extreme genres and long-running genres of extreme music, if not the one that has some of its earliest roots. So naturally it's super important to commemorate, highlight, and talk about some of the releases, just a few, that brought in the new decade, the new century, the new millennium for this genre. If any of these releases interest you, I will be putting them in the description box below if you want to check them out for yourself as a gateway record or anything of that nature. Let's get right into the video. First up, we got Morbid Angel with Gateways to Annihilation. Remember when Morbid Angel didn't suck? Yeah, I do. A lot of people do. Recently, Morbid Angel's kind of been in the tubes. A lot of people, especially newcomers, will say they suck. They hear Morbid Angel associated with all these mixed signals, and that in turn gives them mixed signals themselves, but don't be fooled, Morbid Angel really does have a pretty damn sick discography under their belt. Gateways to Annihilation is not their best sounding, it's not their most technical, it's not their most jarring, it's not their best production, and it's not even their best lyrically. But you just cannot deny the chemistry and the fury in that dark place that this record came from. It rung in the new decade with a death metal release that really rung the bells and had all the same cutthroat buzzsaw as the era that Morbid Angel came from. The same aggression that helped them come out on top even over contemporary bands that were either worshipping their own sound or creating their new path in the niche. That takes gusto, that takes proficiency, and some of the solos and passages on this record are electric as hell. Next up, we got Immolation with Close to a World Below. Yeah, I don't think that anyone will be surprised to know this is here. Immolation's fourth record lands here on this list. It's not going to be a surprise for anyone that knows the year, knows the band, knows the album. It is by far, I would say, the most acclaimed release on this entire list. Immolation is a band that had such a rip-roaring sound for their time, with a production that was so audible but also clean for the genre. While on the topic of them, I will say that all of the records that they came out prior and after this record are all very sick in their own right, and I'll probably get to them in time. They have a habit of having these creative surges, I suppose, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of the three records that came prior to this release, holy shit, does this record just feel so massive, so huge, it just feels essential, and it still holds up incredibly. It still holds up as one of the strongest death metal releases from 2000 to 2009, and it is a fantastic statement for the band that they still have held up and that this record is still super enjoyable even today. Even amongst the current field of death metal, this has iconic riffs, gnarly vocals, great drum work, really rigid production. Chances are death metal fans probably have already heard of this record, but if you haven't, check it out. Next up, Vader with Litany. Long-running Polish death metal band Vader finds their way here, one of the best sounding death metal bands, one of the best metal bands from Poland, and one of those consistent bands that you can always count on to come out with a great record. They dropped one this year that I enjoyed quite a lot. Vader's been at this for a while, but even at this point in their career, do not think that they lulled. I would say out of all of the releases on this list, this record sounds the most dense. It sounds basically just like a rock you're trying to pound your head into. Blood-stained riffs and vocals that just swallow the mix with so much punch and finesse. Heavy as all hell production, and yes, while it is a bit cookie cutter in the grand scheme of things, it just shows just how hard and buff death metal can really sound and just impenetrable it can be. Next up, Chryson with Conquerors of Armageddon. This is the record that really put this band on the map, boasting an old school sound in all of its heavy accoutrements. The quickened thrash metal playing that death metal embodied in the 1980s with bands like Death and Possessed and Morbid Angel are all just turned up, the dials turned up and brought into the new age with more of a newfound production style that sounds a little bit cleaner than some of the really raw recordings of the 80s, and even to a lesser degree, a lot of the 90s. This record really doesn't slow down all that much. It's so fast. The slower and murkier sections that some old school death metal bands really had, this band doesn't necessarily abide by those rules. Bottom line, they blew up for a damn reason, and if you haven't heard this record, you're really missing out on sort of an underground release that deserves more attention for the year 2000. They've dropped a lot of records, so much so that admittedly I have not heard their entire discography. They are fairly prolific for the most part, but if you want a good gauge of their sound and sort of what these scenes sounded like in 2000, this is definitely worth your time. Next up, Deicide with Incinerate Him. Such an essential band, one that will not surprise anyone, another pretty obvious entry. Deicide's 2000 output was pretty strong for the most part, but at the turn of the decade, it really saw them taking their style into a whole new approach that didn't really sound like a lot of what they had done previously, or at least to this effect. The vocals were still Cookie Monster, and the percussion still had the thumping nature that was present on other Deicide records. However, the biggest difference was the groove-laden riffs, bit more melodic, bit more atmospheric. It wasn't so one note and one-dimensional, and Deicide was really proving themselves to be one of the more technical of the normal death metal bands. At some juncture, you'll start to realize that this is a fairly tame release both for Deicide and feels a little bit tame for the genre standard at the time. Yes, the vocals are very heavy and rough, but generally if you want a more consumable version of death metal that is a little bit more groovy, a little bit more catchy, this one is one to check for. Want to shout out Cannibal Corpse with Live Cannibalism. Cannibal Corpse, the most cookie cutter death metal band that pretty much most people enjoy. And for a damn good reason. They are a band that just has so much fucking fun with what they do. I've seen them live, they kick absolute ass. Definitely suggest seeing them live if you ever get the opportunity. Corpse Grinder is one of the most iconic frontmen in death metal, period. He is right up there with Chuck in my eyes. This live album gets overlooked though. I have returned to this quite a few times. I believe it was recorded in Milwaukee, and let me just say, this recording is stellar. Whoever worked on this, fantastic job. With a great setlist that perfectly encapsulates their career up until that point. While Cannibal Corpse has been treading water a little bit as of late, and I would say their juices aren't necessarily flowing as much as they used to, this record having all of their best music put in sort of a compilation, and that's what this plays out as, a compilation, because yes, it is a live recording, but it's really good. Not only does it show just how tight they are live as a band, but it also shows how technical they really can be, really showcasing that they're not as one note as people say. So many people sell them short, but I really recommend this record. So obviously there are a ton of records I could have talked with. I'm going to limit it to this, but I want to know, what are some of your favorite death metal records from 2000? It can be melodic, technical, it can be heavy, it can be slow, it can be whatever you want. What did I miss on this list that you think should have been included? And what are your thoughts of the records that are on this list? Be sure to let me know in the comment section below. I would love to hear it. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, the Review Guy, and I'm signing off saying farewell.